It's interesting, the show begins, I'm hearing the music. Mr. Producer knows this. I have a plan, and then I abort the plan immediately, like I am right now. Because, well, it doesn't matter how I think, but I was thinking about so much of the unreality that we have to deal with. The vast majority of things that we're told to believe, we don't believe. The vast majority of things that our kids are told to believe, we tell them don't believe it. Most of which comes across our table, news, TV, radio news, the written word news, we don't believe it. In other words, so much of what's going on in our country today, in our lives today, has absolutely nothing to do with what we're being told. And on the other hand, things are changing in our country in ways that we reject. In fact, in many ways, we're appalled by it. It's not like we put it up to some kind of a plebiscite. You and I don't really have a say in any of these things. What goes in our classrooms? K through 12, these are called public schools, but they're government schools. They're indoctrination mills. As the progressives told us 120 years ago, a.k.a. the American Marxists, they should be. They borrowed that from Stalin. How do we know? They told us. They told us right there in the pages of the New Republic in 1928, John Dewey himself. Woodrow Wilson told us in 1908, I'm doing this all off the top of my head, but this is the way it works, when he was president of Princeton, and he wrote a treatise on the Constitution and how to interpret it. Forget about the Constitution, he says in so many words. It's an old document, and you hear it today. It can't possibly keep up with a big, vibrant, industrialized nation, which it was not at the founding, and reject the Declaration, he says. All that talk about unalienable rights, and we get our rights from God and all the rest, that's all quaint stuff. It's all quaint stuff. But what does that have to do with anything? He says, look at the back end of the Declaration where they have over 20 complaints that they're making. That's what you need to look at. Franklin Roosevelt, we're told, is the greatest modern president. For the Democrats, the greatest president ever. Why? Because he destroyed our economic system. He prolonged the Depression. He changed the relationship between we, the people, and the individual and government. And now every Democrat who gets elected wants to do better and be bigger than FDR, including the idiot that's in the Oval Office right now. He went at war to the Supreme Court of the United States. He went to war, destroyed its independence, threatened to pack it. Eventually he did. As the older members of the court retired, he replaced them with radicals and racists. Justice Black, been a lawyer for the Klan in Alabama, senator from Alabama. You look at our entire history, how it's rewritten. You look at the history of the Democrat Party versus the Republican Party. Look how that's rewritten. They actually flipped the parties. You look at the people who bring you news. They have no real substantive background. They have no real substantive experience. And to the extent they have any resume, it's a resume that is radical, or a resume of being with or connected to in some way the Democrat Party, the overwhelming majority of them. And look how these people use modern technology to further try and control us and brainwash us, whether it is social media, but for one of my heroes, Elon Musk. Look at them. They were more than happy to do the bidding of the Biden administration, the FBI, DHS, Adam Schiff. More than happy to do it, and they did it. The pages of the New York Times, this is a newspaper, a corporation that should have gone out of business a long time ago for its outrageous inhumanity, whether it was Ukraine or the Third Reich or Cuba or today with Hamas and Israel. Who are these people? Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, lightweights, failed politicians and operatives and radio hosts. Comcast gives them a platform. Who's Comcast? What are they? Who's on their board? So much of what's going on, swirling around us, we have no control over. It is static in our ears. But they have control over what? How we're governed. How our kids are taught. And it's 99.9% pro this American Marxist Democrat Party ideology. They seek to change the American people from a free-thinking, engaged, independent, curious, and industrious people to a people who are dispirited, silenced, subsidized, inattentive, and compliant. And in this pursuit, language and thought control are essential. And should they succeed, well, there will likely exist the patina of a free and vibrant people living under democratic conditions and voting in regular election cycles. But it will be a grand deception. Because in truth, the Democrat Party and these surrogates and these elements in our culture will oversee an omnipresent, despotic government that will rule in matters large and minute, the evidence of which is rising all around us. Look at Joe Biden. Nobody with any objectivity, any seriousness, any desire to succeed would ever hire Joe Biden to do anything. He can't do anything. And he's never really done anything other than get elected to the Senate 6 times from a tiny Democrat state. To hang on Obama's coattails, who never did anything either, to become vice president of the United States. And look how he's running his campaign now. There's no real campaign. There are legal efforts to try and get Joe Biden elected president. There are billionaires trying to get Joe Biden elected president. There are free media, massive in-kind contributions coming from the Democrats in the media and the corporatists that own these media platforms and outlets. He's going to run on democracy? Victor Davis Hanson, if I get around to it, has a great piece today that Joe Biden seems to think he has to destroy democracy in order to run on democracy. These people are destroying, more accurately, our constitutional republic. They're destroying it. Even today as I speak, and there's no pushback, there's no real media attention. I see it in the Washington Examiner by Breck and Thies. Education Department accelerates student loan debt cancellation plan. Now, why does this matter? Why does it matter? This is a grave usurpation of the power of the purse from Congress, particularly the Republican House. And it's a grave violation of separation of powers because he is he is usurping the Supreme Court in its ruling that he doesn't have this power. And on he goes. The media are very powerful. They don't report something, well then, for millions of people, nothing ever happened. The Biden administration announced this morning it's expanding and accelerating its income-driven student loan forgiveness plan Borrowers who originally took out loans of $12,000 or less have made at least 10 years of payments will be eligible for complete debt cancellation as early as next month. They call it the Saving and Valuable Education Plan. This is a crude, despotic effort, unconstitutional on at least two levels, in which he wants to transfer wealth from the taxpayer, or those of us who have to pay the interest on the debt, and future generations to part of his voting base. 3 weeks ago, he signed an executive order increasing the salary, the base salaries of all federal personnel by 5.5%. The greatest increase in 40 to 50 years. Just did it. Signed an executive order that they kept quiet for as long as they possibly could. That gives 4 hours leave for any bureaucrat to vote. And a 4-hour leave for any bureaucrat to work at the precincts. That's an army of over 2 million people, the overwhelming majority of whom are Democrats and donate to Democrats. With the signature of a pen. You had no input. I had no input. Nobody had any input. It's out there in independent media. It hasn't been reported by big media, corporate media, because they don't care. They support it. They support the Democrats. In addition to the $12,000 10-year payment limit for immediate cancellation, the plan allows borrowers to receive the benefit after 1 year of additional payments per $1,000 above $12,000 borrowed. Now, who passed this law? Nobody. Who said he couldn't do it? The Supreme Court. But he's doing it while he's running around talking about democracy. Therefore, someone who borrowed $13,000 would have to make a minimum payment 11 years before getting the remainder of his or her debt erased. The offer is based on the original principal of the loan, not current debt. The Department of Education added it believes that the plan will make 85% of community college borrowers debt-free within 10 years. It's not my job. That's not your job. And by the way, what does it teach this generation? I have to be honest with you. I always am. I have friends and I know people who are very upset about the Democrats, very upset about the growth of government. They're very upset about people on the dole, the debt. And they're 100% correct. And yet some of them are on the dole. This is what Mises meant. That we all sound like Marxists now. They're on the dole. Proudly. Working the system. While complaining about it. That's why sometimes you have to throw your hands in the air and say, Jesus, they've conquered us. They've devoured this generation. This generation. Now, the Education Department is going to announce an outreach program to accompany the rollout in which the department will start emailing borrowers to encourage them to sign up for the program. It also plans to work with third parties to boost enrollment in the plan. So you can see that this is basically a Democrat Party operation. They're not giving any such leniency to mortgage borrowers, people who borrow money to buy cars, nor should they. Just a specific group of people.